For my 31st birthday, my mother-in-law handed me divorce papers. She did it like it was a performance, standing in front of everyone at the restaurant, declaring it was from all of us. My husband had his phone out, recording my reaction like I was the evening's entertainment. I didn't flinch. I thanked her, signed the papers right there, and walked out. What she didn't know was that 3 days earlier, I'd already uncovered everything. It happened in the kitchen, early morning, before my shift at Romano's. I'd crept downstairs for coffee, expecting silence, but instead found Margaret sitting at the table. Reading glasses balanced on her nose, her shoulders bent low, she pored over stacks of legal documents. She wasn't just reading them, she was dissecting them, marking the margins with a red pen, her expression sharp, almost predatory. For a woman in her 60s, the intensity felt unsettling. The floor creaked beneath my steps. Her head snapped up, eyes locking on me. For a split second, I saw its satisfaction. Not the usual disapproval, not disappointment, but something darker. She gathered the papers with a speed that didn't fit her age, slipping them into an envelope designed like a birthday card. Pale pink, silver lettering, butterflies sketched along the edges. A card so beautiful, so delicate, it looked like a gesture of love. She pressed her fingers along the seams of the envelope as though she admired her choice, as if it were something priceless. "Good morning, dear," she said, her voice sticky sweet, false enough to curdle my stomach. She had never called me that before. Usually it was David's wife. Or worse, nothing at all. Her sudden attempt at tenderness sounded rehearsed, like she was testing the word on her tongue before discarding it forever. She lifted the envelope toward me with a careful smile. "I picked this one specifically for you." I tried to shake the unease, poured myself coffee, and forced small talk. When I asked about the paperwork, she let out a light, airy laugh, so unlike her usual clipped tone that it made my skin prickle. "Oh, this is something special I've been working on for quite some time," she said. "David doesn't even know about it yet." That caught me off guard. In the 2 years I'd been married, Margaret had never bothered with surprises. Gift-giving for her was a formality, nothing more than a duty on holidays. But now, here she was, acting like she had planned something extraordinary. My heart wanted to believe it was progress. That maybe she had finally noticed how hard I was trying to fit into this family, how desperately I had been clawing my way toward respectability despite their judgment. She placed the envelope into her purse like it was sacred. "It's something that will change everything. I've been consulting with professionals to make sure it's handled properly. You deserve something meaningful after all this time." Her words slipped into me like light breaking through clouds. For the first time in months, I let myself feel hope. Maybe Margaret had seen me. Maybe she understood I loved David, that I had endured their criticism because I wanted to belong. I started to imagine something good waiting inside that envelope, something that could shift the way we existed together. David appeared then, dressed for work, polished and calm as always. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his travel mug, and shared a look with his mother. It wasn't a casual glance. It was a conversation without words, an agreement sealed in silence. I stood there, caught outside of it, feeling like an intruder in my own home. When I asked if something was going on, David smiled softly. "We're planning something special for your birthday," he said. And in that moment, I believed him. The week leading up to my birthday unfolded like a strange play, every scene rehearsed by Margaret. She called me twice. Not to criticize, not to check on David, but to ask about my schedule. To make sure I'd be free for dinner on the big day. That alone was unusual. But then she suggested Romano's, my restaurant. The place she had always dismissed, always avoided when David suggested family meals there. "I think it would be meaningful to celebrate where you work," she said on the phone, her voice dripping with sentiment that didn't belong to her. "It's important we acknowledge all aspects of your life." On the surface, it sounded kind, almost motherly. But underneath, something in her tone scraped against my nerves. Margaret didn't speak in words like acknowledge or meaningful. She never once showed interest in my life, let alone suggested honoring it. Her sudden warmth felt less like a breakthrough, more like a performance. Calculated. precise, dangerous. Even Emma, David's sister, shifted her behavior. She smiled too much, lingering whenever Margaret mentioned my birthday plans. She volunteered to help arrange the dinner. Emma, who usually slipped away from anything involving me with excuses about work or other obligations. Her sudden enthusiasm didn't feel like acceptance. It felt like collusion. Still, I swallowed my doubts. I wanted so badly to believe this was real. That maybe, finally, the tide was turning in my favor. David only added to the illusion. He grew almost boyishly excited as the week went on. His phone lit up constantly, buzzing with messages. Each time, he'd grin at the screen, quickly angling it away when I leaned in, teasing me about surprise business. He made it sound playful, secretive in a loving way, and I let myself believe it. I convinced myself it was all part of the birthday surprise they were planning for me. The night before, Margaret called one final time. "Wear something nice," she instructed, "but nothing too formal. You'll want to be comfortable for what we have planned." Her voice carried an edge that I mistook for excitement. I stood in front of my closet longer than usual, searching for balance. Professional but approachable. Polished but soft. I settled on a navy dress and checked myself in the mirror again and again. The reflection staring back was someone desperate for approval, smoothing every wrinkle, chasing perfection. That night, David was different too. More tender than he'd been in months. He held me close, kissed my hair, whispered how much he loved me. His voice trembled with intensity, almost like a goodbye. "Tomorrow will be a day you'll never forget," he said against my ear. I fell asleep wrapped in his arms, feeling cherished, finally hopeful. I didn't realize his tenderness was guilt. I didn't see that Margaret's decorated envelope still waited in her purse, its contents ready to gut me in front of everyone. While I dreamed of belonging, she was likely rehearsing the words that would cut me out of their family forever. I woke up believing my 31st birthday would be the day I was accepted. Instead, it became the day Margaret delivered me freedom. Freedom I didn't yet recognize, disguised in cruelty, wrapped in pink paper and silver letters. The first time I understood how little I belonged came long before that night. It was after our honeymoon at David's cousin Michael's graduation party. I remember getting ready for hours, pulling on a conservative black dress, choosing understated jewelry, hoping invisibility would protect me. But the moment I walked through the door, Margaret steered me into the spotlight. "This is David's wife," she announced, presenting me to a circle of relatives I'd never met. Then came the pause, the deliberate hesitation. "She works in the service industry." Her words landed like stones in still water. I saw the ripples move across their faces. Aunt Patricia's eyebrows shot up. Cousin Janet's lips twisted into a sympathetic smile that dripped with pity. "How interesting," Janet said, her tone condescending, as if my existence was a curious mistake. "What kind of service work do you do?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Margaret was faster. She explained that I was still figuring things out, working temporarily in food service. She shaped me into someone aimless, lost, unworthy. They nodded and turned back to their conversations, shifting smoothly to Michael's internship at a law firm, another cousin's promotion, Emma's engagement to a doctor. Their successes stacked like bricks in a wall I could never climb. When someone asked about me again, Margaret redirected with ease. She pivoted to David, praising his accounting practice, gushing about his professional growth. I slipped away to the bathroom, choking on the suffocating air of judgment, needing space to breathe. But in the hallway, I heard her voice again. Calm, composed, slicing. "We're hoping she'll find something more suitable soon. David deserves a wife who can contribute to their social position properly." The words hit harder than any slap. In that single sentence, she stripped me of everything. My work, my effort, my identity. I was reduced to nothing more than a failure in her eyes. A liability, unfit to stand beside her son. Thanksgiving came 3 months later, and with it, the familiar performance, only now louder, sharper, more pointed. Margaret had invited nearly everyone. Cousins, aunts, uncles. Faces I hadn't seen since the wedding, some I barely remembered. The house was glowing with holiday warmth, but beneath it, I could feel the tension building like static in the air. When it came time to share what we were thankful for, the ritual turned into Margaret's stage. She praised Emma's engagement to Dr. Patterson, her eyes shining with pride. She applauded David's expanding client base at his accounting firm, her words heavy with approval. Each compliment rolled off her tongue like a polished jewel. But when it came to me, she skipped right over, as if I weren't sitting at the same table, as if my existence required no acknowledgement at all. When my turn finally came, I chose safety. "I'm thankful for family and good health," I said quietly. No mention of work. No mention of Romanos. I had learned my lessons well. Don't hand her more ammunition. Still, the silence that followed felt colder than any insult. Later, in the kitchen, Patricia pulled me aside. She pretended to help with dishes, but really, it was a setup. "You know, dear, Margaret just wants what's best for David," she said, her tone heavy with pity. "Have you thought about going back to school? There are so many opportunities for women willing to improve themselves." Her words landed like a verdict, confirming what I already knew. They had discussed me, dissected me, and reached their conclusion. I wasn't enough. Thanksgiving wasn't celebration anymore. It was survival. Christmas only drove the point deeper. Emma unwrapped a silk scarf, beautiful and expensive. I unwrapped a book titled Professional Success for Women, wrapped in newspaper. Not even real wrapping paper. The message wasn't subtle. Others received gifts. I received assignments. Proof that no matter how hard I worked, I was still considered unfinished, unworthy. By February, the walls of my marriage had shifted. Margaret organized a grand celebration for David's birthday at an upscale restaurant. She invited his colleagues, successful friends, polished professionals who spoke in the language of investments and business growth. I dressed carefully, wore my best dress, tried to blend in. But my attempts fell flat. Whenever I added something to the conversation, smiles flickered briefly, then faded. The blow came when someone asked about my work. Before I could answer, David cut in. "She's exploring different opportunities right now," he said, eyes fixed on his glass. He wouldn't even look at me. The man who once bragged about my work ethic now spoke about me like I was unfinished business, an embarrassment to cover quickly before anyone noticed. March brought Emma's engagement party. She filled the room with her sorority sisters. Ambitious women with shining careers. They asked polite questions, trying to include me. But Margaret hovered nearby, circling like a hawk. Every time I mentioned Romanos, she swooped in, cutting me off with a new topic, wedding details, career updates from someone else. She edited me out of conversations in real time, erasing the parts of me that didn't fit her script. The worst came at Easter. Margaret invited her friend Carol, a retired executive who spent the evening cataloging her children's impressive careers. When Carol turned to me with genuine interest, I barely got a word out before Margaret interrupted. "She's between opportunities," she said smoothly, exploring her options for growth. My truth, honest work, steady income, was stripped down into something shameful, something temporary. I excused myself, locked the powder room door, and cried into tissues. Alone, invisible in a family that had made rewriting me into a pastime. And it didn't stop at gatherings. It bled into every part of life. At dinners, at birthdays, in the family group chat. Margaret's voice was everywhere, turning my story into one of failure in need of correction. Emma added to the chorus, sharing articles about powerful women, attaching little notes about inspiration and goals. When I responded with encouragement, she followed up with probing questions about my career plans, questions that sounded less like interest and more like interrogation. Even David changed. The man who once loved my independence, who admired my grit, now looked embarrassed when I spoke about my work. He cracked jokes about upgrading my career, as though my job was a temporary stain he couldn't scrub out. His silence was worse than Margaret's cruelty, because silence meant agreement. The pattern had become clear. Every gathering was the same performance. Every interaction another attempt to erase me and replace me with someone more acceptable. Margaret wasn't just undermining me. She was rewriting me. And David was letting her. Margaret always found new stages for my humiliation. At the country club, she performed for her friends, turning my job into a family burden David was forced to carry. She described my life not as my own, but as a problem they were managing. And her friends absorbed every word. When they saw me at events, their smiles were syrupy, their comments drenched in pity. "You'll find your path soon, dear. It's just a phase." They didn't see me. They saw Margaret's version of me, a project, not a person. I began to see myself through their eyes. Mirrors became my enemy. Photographs reminded me of everything I lacked. Margaret's subtle digs about my appearance wormed into my choices, every outfit, every swipe of makeup. I started spending money I didn't have, chasing clothes I thought might make me look like the women she respected. Professional. Polished. Worthy. My credit card balance grew heavier. My confidence shrank to dust. By the spring of our second year of marriage, I wasn't the same woman David had fallen in love with. Margaret's slow, deliberate campaign of disapproval had reshaped me into someone smaller, uncertain, afraid. I had once been confident, independent. Now, I questioned everything, my worth, my choices, my place in David's life. Every holiday, every dinner, every gathering whispered the same message. I was not permanent. I was a temporary mistake. The breaking point came on an ordinary afternoon. I was in the hallway, frozen, listening to a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. Margaret's voice, calm and sharp, carried through the air. She was speaking to her friend Helen about David's marriage. "About me. I keep praying he'll come to his senses before it's too late. He's such a good boy. He deserves someone who can enhance his life, not hold him back." I stood in my own home, listening to my mother-in-law pray for my erasure. And in that moment, the truth cut clean. I was never going to win. Margaret didn't just hate my job. She hated my existence in her son's life. This battle wasn't about compromise or earning her respect. It was a war I could never win because the rules were fixed. Acceptance wasn't on the table. Transformation or disappearance, that was all she wanted. The next morning, I sat at my laptop, fueled not by hope but by defiance. If she was praying for David to leave me, I would prove her wrong. I would become the woman she claimed he deserved. I opened job search sites, LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster, every local portal I could find. The glow of the screen lit up my desperation. My resume sat before me, pitiful. 1 page. 3 years at Romano's. A high school diploma. Scattered part-time jobs from my teenage years. Empty spaces where degrees and achievements should have lived. I rewrote every line, over and over, trying to disguise service work as professional skill. Managed multiple client relationships. Coordinated complex service delivery under time-sensitive conditions. The words felt inflated, almost ridiculous, but I clung to them. Online guides promised the right language could bridge the gap. Cover letters became my obsession. Each morning, I rose early, pouring myself into applications, administrative assistant positions, customer service roles, entry-level office jobs spread across 3 counties. Each letter took an hour, explaining how restaurant work had prepared me for bigger challenges. I highlighted reliability, communication, pressure handling. I sold myself with everything I had. The world didn't buy it. The first rejection arrived within hours, seeking candidates with medical office experience. The second followed quickly, college-level education required. By the end of the first week, my inbox was flooded with polite dismissals, each one confirming the same truth. I wasn't qualified for the life I was chasing. One night, David found me hunched over the laptop, tears blurring the rejection emails. He rubbed my shoulders gently. "Maybe you're aiming too high, too fast," he said. "There's nothing wrong with starting smaller, working your way up." He meant to comfort. But his words echoed hers, Margaret's constant refrain that I should lower myself instead of lifting higher. The interview at Henderson Insurance shattered the last of my illusions. I still remember the building. Glass doors, marble floors, heels clicking like gunfire as women in tailored suits strode past, voices firm, confident, connected through sleek headsets. I felt like a child pretending to be an adult, even in my best outfit. Mrs. Henderson, the hiring manager, skimmed my resume for less than 30 seconds before setting it down. Her disappointment was unmasked. Your background is quite limited for this position. We hire candidates with insurance experience or business degrees. What made you think you'd be qualified for account management? I launched into my carefully rehearsed answers, transferable skills, eagerness to learn, but they fell flat in the sterile room. She checked her watch as I spoke, a signal that the conversation wasn't worth her time. 15 minutes later, the interview was over. Perhaps you should consider positions more aligned with your current skill set, she suggested, her tone final. The drive home stretched into eternity. I pulled into a parking lot, sat in silence, and replayed every word, every awkward answer, every flicker of disdain on her face. Margaret's voice returned, relentless. Some people just aren't meant for professional environments. In my desperation, I turned to education. Community college. A business program at night. A way to collect the credentials Margaret said I lacked. Maybe a way to silence her. Maybe a way to rebuild myself into someone they couldn't erase. That I signed up for classes like a soldier preparing for battle. Introduction to business. Basic accounting. Professional communication. I paid the tuition with money I had set aside for new furniture, convincing myself this was an investment in my future. The first night of class shattered my confidence. The room buzzed with voices of professionals, men and women already in the corporate world, chasing promotions or pivoting careers. They spoke in fluent business language, confident and assured. I sat quietly, taking frantic notes, praying no one would ask me about my background. My experience was a different language altogether. Professor Martinez assigned our first project, build a professional network, interview someone in the field we hope to enter. Around me, students rattled off names of mentors and contacts, friends from internships, colleagues from other firms. I had no one.
No mentors.
No professional allies. My world began and ended at Romano's restaurant. The silence of my isolation screamed louder than their conversations. When I showed David my schedule, his response was practical but hollow. Are you sure this is worth the time and money? Maybe focus on finding work first. Education can come later. His words made sense on paper, but underneath, I heard the same note of doubt. Another quiet vote of no confidence. The exhaustion soon bled into my shifts at Romano's. Late nights buried in textbooks left me sluggish during the busiest hours. Job rejections drained the last spark of energy I had for customers. I caught myself zoning out while taking orders, scribbling mistakes on tickets, forgetting drink refills. Mr. Romano noticed before anyone else. One slow afternoon, he leaned against the counter, watching me struggle. You seem troubled lately, he said softly. Is everything all right at home? His concern was so genuine it almost broke me. I wanted to spill everything, the suffocating judgment, the endless battle for approval, but I swallowed it down. I gave him the easy lie, stress. Just stress. Maria, our head cook, became my secret therapist. She saw my red eyes, my trembling hands after another night of rejections, and quietly slid extra coffee or food toward me without asking. One afternoon, she looked me straight in the eye. Education is good, but don't let anyone make you ashamed of honest work. Her words were a rare lifeline, reminding me I wasn't worthless, no matter what Margaret said. But ambition came at a price. Interview clothes, gas for trips to other cities, tuition fees, textbooks stacked on our small kitchen table. Each expense tightened the noose around our budget. David began monitoring every purchase, questioning every receipt. Do you really need another outfit? You're not getting hired anyway. When he reviewed our credit card statement one night, he sighed. Maybe we should take a break from all this. You're spending more trying to get jobs than you'd earn in the first few months. He thought he was being practical. I heard something else. Abandonment. At the moment I needed his faith the most, he stepped back. The community college library became my sanctuary. A quiet refuge where Margaret's judgment couldn't reach me, where the weight of finances lifted for a few hours. I sat in corners surrounded by business textbooks, career guides, and highlighted pages that smelled like fresh ink and possibility. Study groups formed around me, clusters of students sharing resources, but I stayed alone, too ashamed to explain my background. Yet inside that silence, something unexpected bloomed.
My grades.
They were excellent. My essays were sharp, my case studies thorough. Professor Martinez praised my insights. She even asked me to share examples from my restaurant job, proof that customer service was more than small talk and orders. For 3 hours each week, in that classroom, I wasn't a burden. I wasn't a disappointment. I was capable. But the moment I stepped back into my house, it evaporated. When I told David about a high grade, he barely looked up from his phone. That's great. Maybe Margaret will be impressed when you finish the program. My achievement wasn't mine anymore. It became another offering to place at Margaret's feet. The semester ended with strong grades. My hope flickered. But the job applications told a harsher story. Rejection after rejection. Insufficient experience. Degree incomplete. Requires corporate background. The words blurred together until they became a single sentence. You don't belong here. Margaret's response was predictable when David mentioned my grades. Community college is a good start. But real careers require university education. Even success was recast as proof of my failure. Even progress wasn't enough. Still, I refused to stop. Summer came, and I created a system, spreadsheets with color-coded cells. Green for submitted, yellow for pending, red for ejections. Within weeks, the screen bled red, a battlefield of closed doors. The rejection from Pinnacle Marketing gutted me most. I had driven 45 minutes for that interview, wearing a brand new blazer I'd bought on credit. The HR director barely skimmed my resume. She asked 2 shallow questions about my restaurant experience, then spent the rest of the time explaining why they needed someone with a traditional business background. Her final words landed like a blade. Your customer service skills are admirable, but this role requires strategic thinking that comes from corporate experience. She might as well have told me waitresses couldn't think. I shook her hand, thanked her politely, and walked to my car feeling smaller than when I'd arrived. The blazer hung heavy on my shoulders, mocking me. I had spent money. I didn't have to be dismissed before I'd even finished speaking. The folder on my desk grew so fat with rejection letters it needed a rubber band to hold it closed. A graveyard of no's. Each letter looked different, but the message never changed. Not qualified. Not enough experience. Not the right fit. I began to recognize the code before I finished reading. While your background is interesting, meant rejection. We've decided to pursue other candidates, meant failure. Some companies didn't bother replying at all. Their silence felt sharper than any rejection. At least a no acknowledged my existence. Silence told me I wasn't even worth a response. I refreshed my inbox like a ritual, dozens of times a day, hoping, begging, waiting for someone, anyone, to see value in me. Margaret's weekly phone calls turned into torture sessions dressed in lace. How's the job search going, dear? She'd purr, her voice syrupy sweet. When I admitted another week had passed with no news, her sighs sounded like sympathy. But underneath, I could hear celebration. These things take patience. Not everyone is cut out for certain kinds of work. Every word dripped like poison. The interview at Westfield Insurance was the most humiliating experience of them all. The receptionist made me wait in the lobby for 2 hours. Other candidates came and went, their confident heels clicking across the marble floor, while I sat stiff in my chair, clutching my resume, forcing a professional smile over growing dread. When Mr. Westfield finally summoned me, he glanced up like he'd forgotten I was even there. Oh, right. The restaurant girl. The word stung worse than a slap. He asked me to complete a computer skills test, spreadsheets, formulas, things I had never seen before. My fumbling was obvious. His impatience grew with every wrong answer. Finally, he leaned back, voice flat but firm. This position requires technical competency. Perhaps you should consider roles more aligned with your current skill level. The words weren't his. They were Margaret's, spoken through another mouth. David noticed the changes in me, though he only saw fragments. "How did it go today?" he'd ask gently when I came home with slumped shoulders and eyes too tired to lie. I started editing the truth. I erased the humiliating details. When the hiring manager at Thompson Real Estate laughed at my salary expectations, I told David it went pretty well. Better to protect what little respect he had left for me. Community college became my safe ground, a place untouched by rejection. Professor Martinez treated me like I mattered. She praised my papers, encouraged me to speak, and used my restaurant examples to explain business concepts to the class. For the first time in months, I wasn't less than. I was a contributor. My classmates, working adults chasing promotions, listened without judgment. They didn't sneer at my background. They nodded. They asked questions. Academic success gave me oxygen. My presentations earned top grades. Professor Martinez often told the class, her practical experience brings valuable perspective. For 3 hours each week, I believed her. For 3 hours, I wasn't invisible. But the outside world didn't care. The rejection from Coastal Bank arrived the same week I got an A on my midterm. While your educational efforts are commendable, we require candidates with banking experience, even for entry-level roles. The irony was cruel. Even entry-level had a locked door. How could I gain experience if no one would hire me in the first place? Romano's was the only constant. The hum of dishes, the clatter of cutlery, the rhythm of service. It grounded me. Mr. Romano noticed the cracks. One Tuesday afternoon, he pulled me aside. "You've been different lately," he said, his eyes kind but searching. "Is everything okay at home?" I wanted to tell him everything. That my mother-in-law was dismantling my soul piece by piece. That David's silence cut deeper than her words. But I couldn't. Instead, I offered him the easy lie. Stress. He wasn't convinced, but he let it go, quietly lightening my load. Fewer tables. More breaks. Silent compassion. Maria became my anchor. A single mother who had survived her own storms, she saw through my forced smiles. "They try to make you think you're not good enough," she said one night as we wiped down the counters. "But look around. You run 6 tables at once. Remember every order. Keep customers happy even when they're difficult. That takes intelligence. Skill. Things they don't teach in fancy schools." Her words pierced through the fog of doubt Margaret had built around me. Tony, the youngest on staff, added his unshakable optimism. "You're the smartest person here," he'd grin. "Those companies don't know what they're missing." His belief felt rare and pure. Faith without conditions. But faith didn't pay bills. Interview clothes. Gas money. Parking fees. Tuition. One by one, they drained our savings dry. David started tracking every dollar, his concern hardening into questions. "Do we really need another outfit? You're not getting hired." At the end of the month, staring at our dwindling balance, he sighed. "Maybe stop applying for now. Focus on school. Worry about jobs later." Practical. Logical. But to me, it sounded like surrender. Like letting Margaret win. Nights became battles. I lay awake replaying every failed interview. Every stammer. Every awkward answer. I imagined the other candidates, polished, prepared, perfect, outshining me with ease. Darkness magnified every insecurity Margaret had ever planted inside me. Sleep fled. Appetite vanished. Food became survival, not pleasure. The weight fell off without effort. At the next family dinner, Margaret noticed. "You look tired, dear. Drawn." Her tone was painted with concern, but her eyes glimmered with something closer to satisfaction. Even my thin frame became another exhibit in her case against me. Proof I couldn't handle life outside Romano's. The folder on my desk grew so fat with rejection letters it needed a rubber band to hold it closed. A graveyard of no's. Each letter looked different, but the message never changed. Not qualified. Not enough experience. Not the right fit. I began to recognize the code before I finished reading. While your background is interesting meant rejection. We've decided to pursue other candidates meant failure. Some companies didn't bother replying at all. Their silence felt sharper than any rejection. At least a no acknowledged my existence. Silence told me I wasn't even worth a response. I refreshed my inbox like a ritual, dozens of times a day, hoping, begging, waiting for someone, anyone, to see value in me. Margaret's weekly phone calls turned into torture sessions dressed in lace. "How's the job search going, dear?" She'd purr, her voice syrupy sweet. When I admitted another week had passed with no news, her sighs sounded like sympathy. But underneath, I could hear celebration. These things take patience. Not everyone is cut out for certain kinds of work. Every word dripped like poison. The interview at Westfield Insurance was the most humiliating experience of them all. The receptionist made me wait in the lobby for 2 hours. Other candidates came and went, their confident heels clicking across the marble floor, while I sat stiff in my chair, clutching my resume, forcing a professional smile over growing dread. When Mr. Westfield finally summoned me, he glanced up like he'd forgotten I was even there. "Oh, right. The restaurant girl." The word stung worse than a slap. He asked me to complete a computer skills test, spreadsheets, formulas, things I had never seen before. My fumbling was obvious. His impatience grew with every wrong answer. Finally, he leaned back, voice flat but firm. "This position requires technical competency. Perhaps you should consider roles more aligned with your current skill level." The words weren't his. They were Margaret's, spoken through another mouth. David noticed the changes in me, though he only saw fragments. "How did it go today?" he'd ask gently when I came home with slumped shoulders and eyes too tired to lie. I started editing the truth. I erased the humiliating details. When the hiring manager at Thompson Real Estate laughed at my salary expectations, I told David it went pretty well. Better to protect what little respect he had left for me. Community college became my safe ground. A place untouched by rejection. Professor Martinez treated me like I mattered. She praised my papers, encouraged me to speak, and used my restaurant examples to explain business concepts to the class. For the first time in months, I wasn't less than. I was a contributor. My classmates, working adults chasing promotions, listened without judgment. They didn't sneer at my background. They nodded. They asked questions. Academic success gave me oxygen. My presentations earned top grades. Professor Martinez often told the class, her practical experience brings valuable perspective. For 3 hours each week, I believed her. For 3 hours, I wasn't invisible. But the outside world didn't care. The rejection from Coastal Bank arrived the same week I got an A on my midterm. While your educational efforts are commendable, we require candidates with banking experience, even for entry-level roles. The irony was cruel. Even entry-level had a locked door. How could I gain experience if no one would hire me in the first place? Romano's was the only constant. The hum of dishes, the clatter of cutlery, the rhythm of service. It grounded me. Mr. Romano noticed the cracks. One Tuesday afternoon, he pulled me aside. "You've been different lately," he said, his eyes kind but searching. "Is everything okay at home?" I wanted to tell him everything. That my mother-in-law was dismantling my soul piece by piece. That David's silence cut deeper than her words. But I couldn't. Instead, I offered him the easy lie. Stress. He wasn't convinced, but he let it go, quietly lightening my load. Fewer tables. More breaks. Silent compassion. Maria became my anchor. A single mother who had survived her own storms, she saw through my forced smiles. "They try to make you think you're not good enough," she said one night as we wiped down the counters. "But look around. You run 6 tables at once. Remember every order. Keep customers happy even when they're difficult. That takes intelligence. Skill. Things they don't teach in fancy schools." Her words pierced through the fog of doubt Margaret had built around me. Tony, the youngest on staff, added his unshakable optimism. "You're the smartest person here," he'd grin. "Those companies don't know what they're missing." His belief felt rare and pure. Faith without conditions. But faith didn't pay bills. Interview clothes, gas money, parking fees, tuition. One by one, they drained our savings dry. David started tracking every dollar, his concern hardening into questions. Do we really need another outfit? You're not getting hired. At the end of the month, staring at our dwindling balance, he sighed. Maybe stop applying for now. Focus on school. Worry about jobs later. Practical. Logical. But to me, it sounded like surrender. Like letting Margaret win. Nights became battles. I lay awake replaying every failed interview. Every stammer. Every awkward answer. I imagined the other candidates, polished, prepared, perfect, outshining me with ease. Darkness magnified every insecurity Margaret had ever planted inside me. Sleep fled. Appetite vanished. Food became survival, not pleasure. The weight fell off without effort. At the next family dinner, Margaret noticed. You look tired, dear. Drawn. Her tone was painted with concern, but her eyes glimmered with something closer to satisfaction. Even my thin frame became another exhibit in her case against me. Proof I couldn't handle life outside Romano's. The folder on the shelf could barely hold its weight. Rejections upon rejections, stacked so high I had to buy a bigger one. Each letter was more than paper. It was hours of preparation, days of hope, and the sting of yet another door slammed shut. Some employers tried to soften the blow. Others didn't bother with gentleness. But the message was always identical. You don't belong here. You're not enough. By autumn, I'd applied to 47 positions across 4 counties. 47. The number echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I told myself the rejections were becoming routine, but every single one cut deep. Each no felt like confirmation of Margaret's prophecy, that I would never climb above my station, that I would never cross into the world David's family considered their birthright. Monday afternoon found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by evidence of my failures. A laundry basket sat at my side, filled with the uniforms of my shrinking life, grease-stained black pants from Romano's, interview blazers that brought no victories, and faded shirts for the days in between. 47 rejections. Margaret's latest barb about community college. David's growing impatience, with the bills piling up. The fight drained out of me. Then my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. Most days I ignored those. Telemarketers, bill collectors, bad news. But that afternoon, something inside me, a whisper, maybe desperation, made me swipe to answer. Hello, is this Jennifer? The voice was warm. Professional, yes, but with a softness that caught me off guard. She said my name as if it mattered. This is Jessica Martinez from Grand Plaza Hotel's Human Resources Department. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. My heart froze. Grand Plaza Hotel. I remembered that application. A desperate late night clicked 6 months earlier, in the dead of winter, when the snow piled outside as fast as rejection emails filled my inbox. I had sent it without expectation, just another name tossed into the digital void. And yet here she was, Jessica Martinez, saying my name like it carried weight. We received your application for our guest services coordinator position, she continued, and I wanted to see if you're still interested in discussing opportunities with our team. I stopped breathing. After months of silence, someone was calling me. Not to dismiss me. Not to lecture me. To invite me. I set down David's half-folded shirt, my hands trembling as I reached for a pen. Yes. Absolutely, I said, trying to steady my voice. I'm very interested. Jessica laughed softly, genuine, encouraging. Not the clipped tone of someone rushing through a list. Wonderful. I have to say, your restaurant experience really stood out. We've found that candidates with your background often thrive here. You understand service from the ground up. Her words landed like a revelation. For years, my time at Romano's had been treated like baggage. Something I had to overcome, apologize for, or hide. But Jessica wasn't dismissing it. She was praising it. She was telling me the very thing I thought disqualified me was the reason they wanted me. She went on, her tone bright with excitement. Grand Plaza specialized in exceptional guest experiences. They didn't want theories. They wanted people who had lived service, breathed it, carried it in their bones. My years of balancing trays, memorizing orders, calming angry customers, that wasn't small. It was skill. It was proof. And then, as if she hadn't already upended my world, she said, "We offer full training for career development, including a management track. Benefits include health insurance, dental, retirement planning, and support for continuing education." I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. At Romano's, health insurance was a dream. Retirement was something I didn't dare think about. Education had been a battle I fought alone. And now, here was an employer offering all three, not as favors, but as part of the job. "There's one more detail," Jessica added, her voice lifting. "The role includes housing in our employee residence. Fully furnished. Utilities included. Just a 5-minute walk to the hotel." I sank into the chair.
Free housing.
Independence.
Distance.
A clean break from the suffocating reach of Margaret and her constant criticisms. 3 hours away from the family dinners where every glance, every remark, was another cut. It wasn't just an apartment. It was freedom. The salary range is $42,000 to $48,000, depending on experience and performance, Jessica finished. The number rang in my ears. At Romano's, I barely scraped $30,000 on good nights, tips included. This wasn't just better pay.
It was a lifeline.
A future. Proof that my worth had been real all along. "I know relocation is a big decision," she said gently, "but we believe you'd be a great fit for our team. Would you be open to scheduling a phone interview later this week?" My mind spun with possibilities I had buried long ago. Professional respect. Financial stability. A fresh start where no one knew my failures. For the first time in years, I felt like someone was opening a door instead of slamming it in my face. "I would love that," I said, my voice stronger, steadier. "This opportunity sounds incredible. Thank you for seeing value in my experience." Her enthusiasm was contagious. We scheduled the interview for Thursday. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to hold onto hope. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at the laundry basket, hands still shaking. A new feeling bubbled up from somewhere I thought was gone.
Hope.
It struck me then, the cruel irony. Somewhere in this house sat Margaret's birthday envelope, thick with legal documents meant to erase me from her family. And yet here I was, holding on to news that could erase her power over me forever. This job was more than employment. It was vindication. Jessica Martinez had seen worth where others saw nothing. She had recognized my experience as proof of ability, not failure. For the first time, I had something that was mine alone. Not Margaret's approval. Not David's permission. Mine. I decided to keep my secret tucked close to my chest until my birthday. For 2 years, Margaret had worked tirelessly to prove I didn't belong. To David, to their family, to their polished circle of friends. But this year, the tables would turn. She had her decorated envelope ready, certain it would break me. Yet what I carried was heavier, brighter, stronger. Not just proof that I was good enough. Proof that I had risen beyond the narrow box she tried to trap me in. That night at Romano's, I moved with a lightness I hadn't felt in months. Plates glided from my hands. My smile felt real again. My regulars noticed. Mrs. Patterson, loyal to her Monday early bird special, reached for my hand as I set down her tea. "You look happier tonight," she said, her eyes soft. Like a weight's been lifted. She was right. The knowledge burned like a flame inside me. Precious, untouchable. Margaret thought she was preparing to humiliate me. What she didn't know was that I was holding the kind of truth that flips power upside down. For once, it would be me delivering the surprise, and she would be the one left speechless. 3 days stretched ahead like a runway. 3 days of waiting, savoring, planning. Her envelope might hold her threats.
But mine?
Mine held a future she couldn't imagine, let alone control. Tuesday morning came, and with it my phone interview with Jessica Martinez. I shut the bedroom door while David was at work, my laptop balanced on my knees. My heart raced, but Jessica's voice cut through the fear. She didn't ask for degrees I didn't have or certificates I couldn't provide. She asked about people, about pressure, about staying calm when everything around me spun into chaos. I knew those answers in my bones. How do you handle difficult customers? She asked. I told her about the couple at Romano's who once waited 90 minutes for a table and left smiling because I treated them like they mattered. How do you juggle competing priorities? I explained how on Friday nights I balanced 6 tables, a birthday party, and an impatient manager, and still managed to get every order right. Jessica laughed softly on the other end. Your references from Romano's are glowing. Mr. Romano spoke highly of your reliability and your ability to build relationships. That's exactly what we value here at Grand Plaza. Her words made me sit taller. Mr. Romano, the man who'd seen me on my worst nights, who watched me stumble under Margaret's shadow, had chosen to see my strength instead. His praise had carried into a future Margaret swore I'd never touch. And then, like lightning through a dark sky, the email came. A formal offer. Elegant letterhead. Numbers and terms that felt too good to be real. Guest Services Coordinator. Starting salary, $45,000. Comprehensive benefits. Employee housing included. I printed 3 copies. One went into my purse like a charm. A reminder that this wasn't a dream. That I could hold it, carry it, claim it. That evening at Romano's, every customer interaction felt different. Mrs. Chin complimented my service, pressed a 20 into the billfold, and I smiled knowing that these same instincts, anticipating needs, offering care, creating calm, would soon carry me into a world Margaret said I could never enter. Maria watched me on break, her sharp eyes narrowing. You seem more like yourself tonight, she said. She was right. The constant weight of being not enough had loosened its grip. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged not just at the table but in the world. Then Wednesday morning, David called. His voice was bright, almost boyish. Mom wants to take you out for your birthday tomorrow, he said. She suggested Romano's. Thought it would be special since you're always talking about how much you love it there. I froze. Romano's? Margaret's choice? For a moment, I let myself believe it. That maybe, finally, she was softening. That maybe she wanted to celebrate me where I felt at home. That's wonderful, I whispered, touched. Does this mean she's accepting my job? David hesitated just long enough to plant the seed I wanted. I think she's starting to understand what makes you happy. She wants this birthday to be special. Hope swelled inside me. Between the job offer and this unexpected olive branch, it felt like the universe was aligning, preparing me for a perfect rebirth. Emma's text came later that afternoon. Can't wait for tomorrow night. This birthday will definitely be memorable. Her excitement felt genuine, a rarity in recent years. Maybe David had spoken to them. Maybe they'd finally noticed my effort. Maybe, just maybe, I was about to step into a room where the balance of power had shifted. That night, I rehearsed in front of the mirror, holding the folded letter like a script. I have some exciting news to share.
Pause. Breathe.
3 days ago, I was offered a position at Grand Plaza Hotel. The words gave me chills. They weren't just news. They were transformation. I imagined Margaret's stunned silence, David's pride, Emma's reluctant respect. Thursday morning, I shopped like a woman walking into a new chapter. A navy dress, subtle, elegant, professional. It whispered confidence without screaming for attention. The fabric brushed against my skin like a promise. At Sandra's salon, I let her curl my hair into soft waves. She studied my reflection with a smile. You're glowing, she said. Something wonderful must be happening. I met her eyes in the mirror. Something wonderful, I confirmed. Tonight is going to change everything. And in my jewelry box, folded neatly, the letter waited, ready to rewrite the story Margaret had spent years crafting about me. Pending your acceptance, we'd like you to start in 2 weeks. Does that timeline work? Jessica's words lingered in my ear long after the call ended. 2 weeks. Not rushed. Not distant. Just enough time to breathe, to prepare, to slip free of Margaret's grip before she had another chance to chip away at me. I repeated my announcement over and over on the drive to Romano's. At red lights, I caught my own reflection in the rearview mirror, watching my lips form the words. I wanted to share some wonderful news with all of you. I've been offered a position at Grand Plaza Hotel. The sentence felt foreign, like trying on an expensive dress I never thought I'd afford, yet discovering it fit as though it had been made for me. By the time I pulled into Romano's lot, anticipation had taken root in my chest. The restaurant had been my proving ground for 3 long years, and now it would be the stage for my transformation. Mr. Romano waved from behind the counter, his apron dusted with flour. He probably wondered why I was walking in as a customer instead of tying on my server's apron. He didn't know that tonight I carried news big enough to change everything. The truth of the job offer had given me armor all week. When Margaret had smirked Tuesday and muttered something about my dead-end situation, I only smiled, steady and unshaken. "Things are looking up," I'd replied and meant it. When she'd reminded David on Wednesday that a wife should contribute meaningfully to family standing, I agreed, nodding with confidence. If only she'd known how far I was about to leap ahead of her narrow vision. Emma's posts on social media, quotes about ambitious women, about drive and higher education, had barely scratched me. She thought she was aiming them at me, little darts of superiority. But I knew the truth now. My ambition had always been there, simmering, waiting. All I'd needed was for someone to see it. David's excitement had been growing all week, impossible to miss. He checked his phone constantly, his face lighting up with every buzz from the family group chat. When I'd asked about plans, he only smiled like a man holding a secret. "You'll love it," he'd said. It didn't feel like conspiracy against me anymore. It felt like love, like partnership. Back home, the jewelry box on my dresser guarded the folded letter, my secret weapon. That document wasn't just paper, it was proof. Tonight it would change everything. It would lift me out of Margaret's shadow, out of the story she'd written about me, and into one of my own. As I walked toward Romano's entrance that evening, a lightness filled my chest I hadn't felt since my wedding day. Margaret's envelope might hold whatever scheme she had planned. But in my purse, I carried freedom, respect, vindication. The bell above the glass door chimed as I stepped inside, my family trailing behind me. Warmth wrapped around us, the hum of conversation, the smell of garlic and tomatoes, the familiar clink of cutlery on plates. This was my second home, and tonight it would bear witness. "Jennifer." Mr. Romano's booming voice carried across the dining room. His weathered face broke into that same broad smile that had gotten me through some of my darkest shifts. He hurried forward, wiping his hands on his apron, pride radiating from him. "So, this must be the birthday celebration you mentioned." I stood taller, pride welling up in me as I gestured toward my family. "Mr. Romano, I'd like you to meet my husband, David, his mother, Margaret, and his sister, Emma." He shook each of their hands warmly, his energy so genuine it filled the space. For the first time, I felt grateful Margaret would see the respect I'd earned here, the affection of people who valued me for who I was. Margaret's smile was polite but thin, her eyes flicking around the room. The red vinyl booths, the handwritten specials board, the mismatched chairs, none of it matched her taste. She didn't have to say it. Her disapproval lived in every glance. But she was here, for my birthday, sitting in a place she would normally dismiss. That in itself felt like progress. "We'll take good care of you tonight," Mr. Romano promised, leading us to the corner booth I had suggested to David. It offered privacy, a little bubble for family conversation, while giving me a clear view of the kitchen. Maria caught my eye from the service window, flashing a quick wink. She'd noticed the change in me this week, the lighter step, the quiet glow. And now, she saw me walk in with my family at my side, ready to celebrate. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was about to step into a moment I had created, not one forced on me by Margaret's judgment. Tony was setting up tables for the dinner rush when he spotted me. He flashed his usual grin, gave me a thumbs up, and mouthed happy birthday. His energy was so pure, so unaffected. It steadied me for what was to come. Sliding into the booth felt almost unreal. How many times had I walked this floor, tray balanced on my shoulder, refilling waters at this very table? Tonight, I sat on the other side, no apron, no order pad, just a guest waiting to be served. Margaret pinched the laminated menu between her manicured fingers, like it was beneath her. She didn't need words. Her disdain for this place radiated in the way she held that menu at arm's length. Emma barely looked up, her attention fixed on her glowing phone screen. Every so often, she glanced at David, their eyes trading messages I wasn't meant to read. "The chicken parmesan is excellent here," I offered, my voice bridging the uncomfortable silence. "Mr. Romano's wife makes the sauce from her grandmother's recipe." Margaret gave a stiff nod, but when the server came, she ordered the most expensive item, lobster ravioli. It wasn't even a specialty here. She wanted to make a point. David couldn't sit still. He kept his phone under the table, his fingers flying across the screen, his attention split. When I tried to draw him into conversation about his clients, his answers were short, distracted, as though something else mattered far more than me sitting across from him. The fourth time his phone buzzed, I leaned closer. "Are you expecting a call?" He glanced at Margaret. She gave him a silent look of permission. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just coordinating some surprises for tonight." I believed him. I wanted to. Margaret was strangely pleasant. Too pleasant. She asked about my classes, nodded at my answers like she cared. No sharp comments.
Nos la digas.
Just a practiced warmth that should have made me suspicious. Instead, I let myself hope. "You've been working so hard to improve yourself," she said, voice smooth, deliberate. "It's admirable how determined you've been despite the challenges." The words sounded kind, but underneath, there was something rehearsed. Emma stifled a laugh, disguising it as a cough when I met her eyes. I ignored it. I wanted to believe the best. The cake arrived, carried by Sandra, one of the servers I'd trained not long ago. She set it down gently in front of me, beaming. Around us, voices rose as the restaurant broke into happy birthday. Regulars joined in, faces familiar, kind. For a moment, I felt seen, celebrated, even loved. "Make a wish," David said, phone lifted to capture the scene. I closed my eyes. I wished for courage. Courage to share my news. Courage to hold my head high. Courage to finally rewrite the story they'd forced on me. I blew out the candles. Smoke curled into the air like whispered prayers. The applause came. Margaret's hands clapped sharply, too loud, too pointed. Then, with the flourish of a stage actor, she reached into her purse. Out came the decorated envelope, the one I'd noticed days before. Pink paper. Silver butterflies. Innocent.
Deceptively so.
"We have a special gift for you," she announced, voice ringing through the restaurant. "From all of us." Other diners turned their heads. They probably thought this was a moment of love, a family celebrating one of their own. Emma lifted her phone, aiming it straight at me. David adjusted his angle. Both cameras locked in on my face. Every movement told me this wasn't spontaneous. This was orchestrated.
Go on.
"Open it," Margaret urged. Her eyes gleamed, not with kindness, but with something sharper, darker. The envelope was heavier than I expected. My fingers traced the edges before tearing it open. Inside, neatly folded papers. My eyes caught the letterhead first. Then the words. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The letters blurred, then sharpened again, growing larger as I stared at them. Divorce papers. On my birthday. In front of my coworkers. In front of my community. The restaurant carried on around us, laughter and forks against plates, but at our booth, the air went still. A bubble of tension, thick and suffocating. Margaret's face said it all. This was no mistake. This wasn't sudden.
She had planned this.
Crafted it. She had chosen my birthday, my workplace, my moment of joy, to stage my destruction. David's phone didn't waver. He was still recording, capturing every flicker of my reaction. Emma leaned closer, her phone steady in her hand. They wanted this on film. They wanted evidence of my collapse. They wanted to watch it again, share it, laugh about it later. The papers felt heavy in my hands. My whole body trembled, but not the way they expected. Margaret's smile was radiant, triumphant. Emma's grin was wicked, hungry. David's expression was strange, nervous, but complicit. This was their celebration, their victory. They had turned my birthday into theater, my pain into entertainment. But as I looked down at the papers, something unexpected rose inside me. Not devastation, not collapse. Something sharper, stronger.
Clarity.
Pure, cold clarity about who they really were and about who I no longer needed to be. David's camera stayed fixed on me, hungry for tears that would never fall. His lens hovered like a predator waiting for the kill shot, but I gave it nothing. The restaurant noise softened, fading into a dull hum. People noticed. They could feel it. Something was happening at our corner booth. Mrs. Patterson, who'd sat in my section every Tuesday for years, twisted in her chair, her eyes narrowing to catch a clearer view. The young couple at table 12 froze mid-sentence, their forks hovering, attention drawn like moths to a flame. I lower my gaze to the papers again. Every detail screamed preparation. An attorney consulted. Paperwork filed. Timing orchestrated down to the hour, down to the candlelight, down to the moment I blew out my wish. Even the pen, sleek, waiting, placed before me like a weapon disguised as convenience. They thought of everything. Well, Margaret's voice sliced through the tension. Her words carried, deliberate, pulling the restaurant into our private spectacle. Aren't you going to say something? This was her performance. I knew the script. I was supposed to cry,
Beg. Break.
I was supposed to give them the scene they'd come here to record. Instead, I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. The ink slid across the line with a finality that felt almost cleansing. My name, steady and sure, closed one chapter and cracked open the door to another. I folded the papers with care, slipping them back into their pink and silver coffin. Margaret's triumphant grin faltered. David's camera trembled, the certainty in his hands replaced with confusion. That's it. His voice was thin, almost boyish. You're not going to fight this? Or ask why? Disappointment. He wanted fireworks. He wanted a collapse. Instead, I gave him stillness. Thank you, I said, rising from the booth with a dignity none of them expected. This is the most generous gift you could have given me. Margaret blinked, bewildered. For the first time in months, I held the power. And I wasn't finished. I reached into my purse. My fingers closed around an envelope, not pink, not decorated, but official.
Sharp.
Defining. I laid it on the table, my voice ringing clear. I have news too. They leaned in, their faces a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. 3 days ago, I was offered a position at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Guest Services Coordinator. $45,000 a year. Full benefits. Housing included. The words rolled off my tongue like a declaration. Every syllable landed heavy, cutting through the silence. Margaret's lips parted, but nothing came out. Emma fumbled with her phone, nearly dropping it before steadying the camera again. David lowered his own reflection of shock staring back at him. The position starts in 2 weeks, I added, savoring their silence. It's in another city, a fresh start, with people who actually value experience, who actually see me. The effect was immediate. Romano's erupted. Jennifer. Mr. Romano's voice boomed, pride swelling in his chest. Maria leaned out from the kitchen window, her smile radiant. You deserve this, she shouted, her accent thick with joy. Tony clapped first, grinning so wide his cheeks reddened. His hands sparked the rhythm. Then others joined. Servers. Regulars. The sound grew, applause swelling until the walls shook with it. Mrs. Patterson lifted her glass high. To Jennifer and her bright future, she declared, and the room roared back in agreement. The energy in that restaurant transformed. What Margaret meant as my funeral had become my resurrection. Their betrayal drowned in waves of applause, my humiliation eclipsed by a community's love. Margaret's face twisted, cycling through emotions like a storm, she couldn't control. Confusion.
Shock.
And finally, fear. She'd plotted my downfall, but instead she'd handed me freedom. She hadn't just lost control. She'd lost her audience. You knew about this job when you signed? David's voice cracked. His phone hung limp in his lap, forgotten. His mind was catching up to the truth. He wasn't leaving me. I had already left him. I got the offer 3 days ago, I said, my eyes locked on David. I watched the color drain from his face as the timeline clicked into place. The same day their whispers and sudden excitement about my birthday began. The realization hit him hard. Emma's phone caught it all, his dawning horror, the way his expression shifted as he pieced together just how badly their plan had backfired. The irony was brutal.
Perfect.
Margaret thought she was handing me a death sentence wrapped in butterflies. Instead, she had signed my release papers. The divorce she shoved in front of me was not my undoing. It was the one gift that stripped away the last chain holding me back. They hadn't broken me. They had freed me. The position includes management training. I continued, drawing the crisp letterhead from my purse, letting the light catch the elegant seal. They sought me out because of my experience. My years at Romano's were exactly what they wanted. They see value where you saw failure. Gasps and murmurs spread through the room. Mr. Romano himself stepped forward from behind the counter, pride lighting his weathered face. His voice carried like thunder. "Jennifer is one of our best," he said, looking Margaret squarely in the eye. "Smart, loyal, respected. Any place that hires her is lucky." His words struck harder than mine ever could. They carried the weight of 3 years. 3 years of watching me serve, solve problems, comfort strangers, and work with the kind of grit no classroom could teach. Margaret's silence was suffocating. The woman who spent 2 years sharpening her tongue against me had nothing left. No lecture, no retort, no smug superiority, just silence. Her envelope of destruction had turned into my liberation. Emma's phone lowered an inch. For the first time, she understood. Their carefully staged ambush, their performance, their trap. It had collapsed. What was meant to be their show of dominance had become my coronation. The footage she was recording would not humiliate me. It would expose them. David stared at the letter like it was in another language. 2 years of echoing his mother's disdain. 2 years of siding with her criticism, only to watch me step out of this booth with independence, respect, and a future brighter than anything he could control. He had not just lost his marriage. He had lost the story his family told about me. The silence stretched long, filling every corner of Romano's. I stood tall, divorce papers in one hand, job offer in the other, one symbol of what they had tried to destroy, the other of what I had built for myself. Margaret's smile twisted into something jagged, unrecognizable. Panic leaked through her composure. David's phone hung motionless. The screen reflected his own stunned face, frozen mid-breath. He no longer knew whether to keep recording. What had been their weapon was now evidence of their cruelty unraveling in real time. "You planned this," Margaret whispered. Her voice cracked, so faint it barely carried over the hum of the restaurant. "You knew." Her words rang hollow. She wanted to believe I had orchestrated this reversal. But she knew. She saw it in my eyes. My calm wasn't strategy. It was relief. Pure, unfiltered relief. "I didn't plan anything," I said, my voice cutting clean and sharp. "You gave me freedom I didn't even realize I needed. While you sat at that kitchen table plotting my humiliation, I was receiving proof that every word you've said about me was wrong." The timing was cosmic, cruel and poetic. The kind of irony no scriptwriter could invent. Emma's camera caught the exact moment Margaret realized she had handed me victory with her own hands. "You expected tears," I said, leaning closer, my tone steady. "You expected me to beg,
To cling.
to crumble. Instead, you handed me the future I deserve." I let the words breathe. Then I delivered the blow. $45,000. Full benefits.
Housing.
Advancement. Management training from day one. Each number, each promise, landed like a strike against the narrative they'd carved into me. Mr. Romano stepped forward again, his hand warm as it closed around mine. His voice carried across the restaurant, proud and booming. "Jennifer," he said, his smile wide and genuine, "this is incredible. You've earned every bit of it." The room, once quiet with suspense, began to stir. People leaned in closer, some smiling, some nodding, many already sensing what this moment truly was. Not my breaking, but my rise. "Grand Plaza Hotel is gaining someone extraordinary," Mr. Romano declared, his voice carrying over the quiet clatter of silverware. "We're going to miss you. But this is exactly what you deserve." His words landed heavy with truth. 3 years of long shifts, of smiling through exhaustion, of serving people with patience when my own heart felt raw. That's what he had witnessed. He had seen me hold my ground under pressure that would have crushed softer spirits. And now, in front of Margaret, he gave me something she never could: respect. From the kitchen, Maria emerged, flowers still dusting her apron. Her eyes glistened as she called across the dining room. "You'll be amazing," she said, her accent warm, her pride unmistakable. "Show them what a Romano's girl can do when she's given a real chance." Her words wrapped around me like armor, maternal, protective, everything Margaret had tried to strip from me. Tony came bounding behind her, his boyish grin brighter than the neon sign outside. "This is the best birthday surprise ever," he shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're going to run that whole hotel someday." Laughter rippled through the room. His enthusiasm spread like fire, igniting joy among the staff and regulars who had become my second family. Mrs. Chin, who never let anyone else serve her Friday dinners, crossed the floor and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Good for you, sweetheart," she whispered. Then she glanced toward Margaret before finishing. "You've always been too smart to stay stuck forever." The difference was undeniable. On one side, warmth, love, and validation from the people who had seen me at my lowest. On the other, Margaret, Emma, and David, silent, rigid, unraveling. "When do you start?" Mr. Romano asked, drawing more of the staff out from the back. They gathered around, faces glowing, abandoning their work just to witness this moment. 2 weeks, I answered. My gaze flicked toward Margaret. Her face paled as she realized the truth. I hadn't been cornered. I had been preparing my exit while she planned my downfall. The papers she had placed in my hands were not shackles. They were clearance papers. "You're really leaving?" David finally managed, his voice thin, uncertain. "Just like that." "I'm not leaving," I corrected softly. "I'm free." The word cut clean, sharper than glass. Free to work where I'm valued. To live where I'm respected. To build with people who celebrate my success instead of waiting for my failure. My tone was calm, but it sliced through the hum of the restaurant with surgical precision. Margaret tried to rally, her voice pitched too high, too desperate. "This is all very sudden, dear. Maybe you should think carefully before rushing into such drastic choices." The irony almost made me laugh. She had just gifted me divorce papers wrapped in butterflies, and now she wanted me to slow down? "I've been thinking for 2 years, I said, my eyes locked on hers. "Every criticism, every comparison to his ex, every time you told me I wasn't good enough. You were right about one thing, Margaret." I paused. Let her lean forward. "I do deserve better." Applause broke out like thunder. Diners at every table joined the clapping, piecing together enough of the story to recognize freedom when they saw it. Their cheers were spontaneous, uncoordinated, authentic. The complete opposite of Margaret's staged cruelty. "The beautiful thing about timing," I continued, my voice rising now, strengthened by their support, "is that your little birthday gift arrived exactly when I was ready to accept freedom. I don't have to choose between my marriage and my dignity anymore. You made that choice for me." Emma's camera kept rolling, but her hand trembled now. The recording meant to capture my destruction was preserving something else entirely. Her family's cruelty exposed, her mother's performance destroyed. The envelope with its glittery butterflies sat limp beside Margaret's purse, ridiculous and childish next to the legal papers it had carried. What was meant as a weapon had become evidence. And I was done being their victim. Every insult, every sideways glance, every attempt to convince me I wasn't enough, it all evaporated. Replaced with this, a community rising to its feet for me, clapping, cheering, holding me up with their genuine affection. David's face twisted with realization, the slow horror of understanding. His mother's gift had cost him a wife, and the video in his hand would never be the family keepsake they imagined. It was proof of their cruelty, proof of his complicity. Margaret sat motionless, her lips trembling. The satisfied smirk she'd worn into Romano's was gone. In its place was a hollow mask. She had not staged my execution. She had staged my coronation. I rose, my purse over my shoulder, my dignity intact. I walked out of Romano's not as their victim, but as a woman stepping into her own power. The cool night air met me like a baptism. Each step toward my car was a step away from the toxicity I had lived under for too long. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. Let them scramble. Let them choke on their own damage control. None of it mattered anymore. 2 weeks later, I stood in the gleaming marble lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. My uniform felt like armor. The name tag over my heart read in elegant script. Jennifer Walsh, Guest Services Coordinator. Not their daughter-in-law. Not the girl they tried to erase.
Me.
My maiden name restored. My respect reclaimed. The apartment they gave me was small but stunning, with windows that framed the skyline and a balcony where I could sip coffee in silence. Silence that felt sacred. Silence that belonged to me.
No criticism. No judgment. No condescension.
Just peace. Jessica Martinez, my supervisor, quickly became more than that. She was a mentor, a guide. In me, she saw the leader Margaret had tried to convince me I could never be. Within weeks, Jessica handed me responsibility for VIP guest relations. Your background gives you instincts others need years to learn, she said during my 30-day review. You read people. You anticipate. You stay calm under pressure. Her belief in me was simple.
Direct.
Unshakable. The kind of belief I'd been starving for. And it was enough to remind me I was never the problem. Those instincts Jessica recognized in me, the ability to read people, anticipate needs, and stay calm under fire, turned out to be exactly what luxury hospitality demanded. The management training program opened doors I never thought I'd walk through. Corporate communication seminars taught me to speak with confidence in rooms full of executives, a language that once felt foreign but now rolled off my tongue with precision. Leadership workshops peeled back layers of doubt, exposing strengths I had always carried but had been taught to bury beneath Margaret's endless criticism. For months in, my first promotion came. Assistant Guest Services Manager. A raise that pushed my salary over $50,000 a year. For the first time in years, money wasn't a chain, it was freedom. I bought clothes that made me feel powerful, not invisible. I sat in salon chairs and saw myself restored, not broken. My savings account finally grew instead of bleeding under constant strain. And then the whispers began to travel. Stories of my progress leaked back into circles I had left behind. Justice had a funny way of delivering itself. Linda, one of Margaret's polished country club friends, checked into the Grand Plaza for a business trip. She saw my name on the staff directory and asked for me by choice. During our meeting, she studied me with sharp curiosity. "You're David's ex-wife, aren't you?" she said, almost startled. "Margaret mentioned you were in hospitality, but she never said you were management. Here, at a hotel like this." Her surprise was honest. And damning. Margaret hadn't bragged about me the way she bragged about others. She had downplayed me, hidden me, because the truth didn't fit the narrative she loved to tell. Within days, Linda's glowing review of my work reached Margaret. I could almost picture the tight smile, the clenched jaw, the silence that followed as her own friend spoke of my competence, my professionalism, my success. The woman who once dismissed me as just a waitress now had to listen as her circle praised the manager I had become. Meanwhile, David crept back through digital cracks. Messages on social media. Short at first, then longer. Polite, then desperate. I never answered. His regret rang hollow, just another echo of the family who only recognized worth after they thought they had destroyed it. The divorce itself unraveled in my favor. Their cruelty, so carefully staged, had documented itself. That video David recorded, meant to catch tears, was Exhibit A in proving premeditated emotional abuse. His attorney couldn't argue against the evidence of their own intentions.
No alimony.
No shared assets. Nothing to bind me to them anymore. Margaret's butterflies and ribbons envelope became the star exhibit in a courtroom, its childish decoration mocking the darkness of what it carried. 6 months after Romanos, I was promoted again. Guest Services Manager. 12 coordinators across 3 departments now looked to me for direction. With the title came a company car, an expense account, and a salary closing in on $60,000 a year. Every milestone struck down Margaret's predictions like dominoes falling one after the other. The night of the annual employee recognition ceremony felt like standing in the spotlight of destiny. I walked across that stage to accept an award for exceptional customer satisfaction scores. Applause thundered around me, executives and community leaders on their feet. And in that moment, I thought about Margaret's voice on the phone months ago, praying for David to come to his senses. Her prayer had been answered, just not in the way she imagined. My speech was short, grateful, honest. I thanked my team. I honored the foundation Romanos had given me. And I let the applause wash over me, the sound of strangers recognizing the worth Margaret had worked so hard to bury. Emma's cryptic posts about ambitious women had stopped. Her little barbs about education and career paths vanished when my name started appearing in local business journals. She couldn't spin against hard evidence. She couldn't sneer at success measured in promotions, leadership, and results. David sent a LinkedIn request the same week as my manager promotion. I didn't even open it. He wasn't reaching out as a husband, not even as an ex. He wanted the shine of association, a seat at a table he'd once flipped upside down. The man who filmed my supposed humiliation now wanted to align himself with my reality. But I no longer needed revenge. My greatest triumph wasn't watching them squirm. It was waking up happy. It was living well. It was realizing their opinions had lost all weight. Margaret's judgment? Irrelevant. Her voice, once the thunder in my ears, had been reduced to static in the background of a life that no longer included her. My colleagues valued me,
Trusted me.
followed my lead. The world Margaret claimed I'd never enter had opened its doors wide and welcomed me home. Standing in my corner office 18 months after that night at Romanos, I looked out over the glittering city skyline. My heart was steady, my shoulders light. Margaret's envelope hadn't destroyed me. It had freed me. Inside those butterfly prints was the best gift she could have given, liberation from people unworthy of my loyalty, my time, or my love. And I walked away carrying the only thing that mattered, myself. If you felt that rush of justice, if you found yourself cheering at this journey, hit that like button right now. My favorite part will always be the moment I signed those divorce papers with steady hands and pulled out that letter. What about you? What moment hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments below. And don't forget, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next story of triumph, resilience, and sweet, unshakable revenge.